Spooky season is officially upon us. If you're a baby witch or a beginner witch, you may be curious about Samhain. How do other witches celebrate it? And how can you do this at home using tools and materials you already have on hand? Welcome, YouTube. Hi, I'm Jenny with Jen and Tonic, and I have been featured in such publications as Yahoo, Homes and Gardens, and HuffPo for my Samhain traditions. The way I screamed when I heard HuffPo. In this video, we'll discuss what Samhain is, and we'll discuss some of the history and folklore surrounding Samhain. We'll go over the magical correspondences for Samhain, and I will give you 3 simple and easy rituals that you can do using what you already have on hand. We will also discuss how to pronounce Samhain. First up, Samhain is also known as Halloween. It is the Gaelic name for Halloween. It is ancient, riddled with mystery, and a lot less scary than a lot of modern people think. The Wheel of the Year contains 8 Sabbats, or high holidays, that fall throughout the year. Equinoxes, solstices, those are all Sabbats, and then there are 4 other ones that kind of fall in the middle, and Samhain is one of those. If you'll recall from last week, Mabon is the celebration of the fall equinox where we enter the dark half of the year. Samhain is the next holiday on the Wheel of the Year after that. Samhain is also the 3rd and final harvest festival of the year. Certain things that are absolutely associated with Samhain include bonfires, especially ritual bonfires. Samhain is ultimately a fire festival. Not like that fire festival. You're not going to lose your money here. Divination is also closely associated with Samhain. Whether you are looking into a crystal ball, that is kind of the stereotypical one, or reading tarot, or casting runes, or reading tea leaves, palms. I'm trying to think of other popular forms of divination. That's about what I've got. There's other things also, but communicating with those who have passed on. You can see my spirit board back over here in the corner. And, some people use that, like along with a pendulum sometimes, for communicating with the dead. It is also said this time of year that the veil between the worlds is the thinnest. Now, what does that mean? The veil between the worlds being thin right now just means that it's a little bit easier to communicate with those who have gone before us. The veil between the physical and the spiritual realm are very thin, and it's a little bit easier to communicate with the spirit realm right now. This also happens in the spring around Beltane. Another very common tradition this time of year is dressing in costume and going door to door. Today we know this as trick-or-treating. However, it has its history and folklore that go back centuries. In ancient times, you would dress as somebody who had already passed on, crossed over, whatever, and you would go door to door collecting soul cakes. Now, the reason that you would dress as somebody who is already dead is because it was thought to keep evil spirits at bay. Soul cakes are fine. I just find them to be a little bit dry and not very interesting to eat. If you want a recipe for some, though, let me know in the comments. Another custom and tradition this time of year is carving pumpkins. We see it all the time on modern front porches. That's kind of the hallmark of the season. Now, back a couple hundred years ago, it was more common to carve turnips with grotesque faces. And that was to ward off evil spirits. So, one question I am often asked is, how do you pronounce Samhain? It's spelled Samhain, and I do get a lot of people saying Samhain, which is fine. The traditional, I believe, Gaelic pronunciation of it is Samhain. Now also, I have heard people pronounce it Samhain, and I believe that is more Irish. or Samhain, which is Scottish, I believe. Now, I won't make fun of you or judge you if you pronounce it Samhain, but if you pronounce it as Samhain, I'll know you're a real one. When is Samhain? Samhain happens between sunset on October 31st and sunset on November 1st. Now let's take a brief look at some of the history of Samhain. Samhain was first referenced in Old Irish literature in the 9th century Common Era. It's really old. In addition to the modern customs and traditions that we follow today, there was also a livestock component because this was when the cattle and the livestock were herded back to the lowlands for the wintertime. The ancient Gaelic festival, Samhain, was co-opted into Christianity as All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day. Even though a lot of Christians these days consider celebrating Halloween, anything to do with Halloween, to be satanic. Patently it is not, and that is a conversation for a different video. Let's discuss the elements of Samhain and go over the correspondences so that you can celebrate it confidently. First up, let's discuss the crystals that are associated with Samhain. We have black obsidian for protection, smoky quartz to assist with divination, amethyst and lapis lazuli to help with communication with the dead. Carnelian, crap, I forgot to wear my frickin' pentacle. Let me go put it on. There, much better. We have carnelian, which is at the center of my pentacle, for courage and creativity, and orange calcite for new beginnings and creativity. Colors associated with Samhain include black and orange, obviously, brown, gold, the colors of harvest, purple for spiritual communication, and white, which represents the stillness and purity of this time of year. I've been seeing a lot of really cute purple and pink Halloween decorations this year, and I think they're so adorable. While pink may not be traditionally associated with Halloween, I am here for it. I think the cute factor also helps the decorations to come off as less spooky or less mysterious. They are so cute. If you haven't seen them, I've seen a lot at my local Aldi, for example. Foods associated with Samhain include apples, pumpkin, squash, and yes, pumpkin is a type of squash, but this also includes like butternut squash or zucchini, summer squash, acorn squash, my personal least favorite, and other varieties of squashes, as well as other gourds. Root vegetables, so things like potatoes, sweet potatoes, rutabagas, turnips, which we've previously discussed in this episode, and one of my favorites, parsnips, along with carrots, beets, and the like. And finally, nuts. Any variety of nuts, also included. Herbs associated with Samhain include sage for purification, rosemary for remembrance and ancestral work, cinnamon for protection, clove, also for protection, and mugwort to assist with psychic abilities. Fun story, I use very few, if any, of these in my Samhain blend that is affectionately known as Bog Witch. That one it's got a couple of things like cedar, which is loosely associated with Samhain, cinnamon, there's a little cinnamon in there. Let's put this all together and discuss some different ways that you can celebrate Halloween actively. Some activities for Halloween or Samhain include trick-or-treating. If you have kids, take them trick-or-treating. If not, pass out candy to the people in your neighborhood. I hereby suggest that we make trick-or-treating not just for kids. We do it for adults too. Maybe we pass out sample bottles of liquor if you drink. Or maybe we gather with our neighbors and have a little cocktail party. That's actually one of my favorite things to do on Halloween. To go along with adult trick-or-treating, you could dress as somebody who's deceased in order to make it a little bit more historically accurate. It's kind of fun, not very creepy, unless you make it creepy, and then it gets weird. You could also host a bonfire, or kind of combine things, and if you have a portable fire pit, you could drag it out to the end of your driveway for trick-or-treat and pass out candy around a fire pit. That's always a fun activity. One of my other favorite things to do, absolutely, is to do a dumb supper. And this is something I do every year. My family looks at me weird, they forget about it every year. Why is it called a dumb supper? No, not because any of us are stupid. That certainly is not the case in my house, and I'm sure it's not in yours either. Dumb being another word for mute. Just it's a silent. You dine in silence, basically. You set an extra plate for the ancestors, you serve them up some food, and you sit in silence and try and communicate with them over dinner. That's all it is. It is a wonderful tradition. Again, appeals to my inner kitchen witch so hard. I love it. You could light a candle, or 50. Who am I to judge? Candles are definitely a thing, though. They're a way to bring the fire inside and into your home and just make it a little cozier. You can also journal about what this last year held and what your hopes and dreams are for the coming year. Now we're going to discuss 3 rituals that you can do for Samhain. First up, you can do your traditional Halloween activities. As we just discussed, trick-or-treating, costume party, bonfire in the driveway. If you want to dress up in costume to hand out candy, that's always fun too. I love doing that. If you can't do a bonfire, another thing that I really like to do is I like to make luminaries. So what you basically do is you take a paper like lunch sack, and you print out like a photo of somebody who has passed away that you love and want to honor, and you can kind of cut out a little circle in or square or whatever shape your photo is, printed. Cut out a photo. Do not use an original photo for this, by the way. Just don't. It's not a good idea. Use one, print one out on your computer if you can, or at a local print shop type thing. It'll be fine. But what you do is you cut out a little square out of your paper sack, and then you glue this printed photo onto that. I usually like to just use regular, 80 pound printer paper for this so that it shines through. And you throw a little sand at the bottom or kitty litter or something like that. And then you put a tea light down on the bottom of it. You light the tea light and you have a beautiful luminary. Luminaries are often associated with, they're associated with Halloween as well, and Samhain. But they're typically more, like we used to always do them at the church that I grew up in for Christmas Eve. It was a big thing. Luminaries are not the greatest idea, though, if it is a particularly windy night or if it's raining like it has been the last couple of years. You can also do a candle ritual. Light a candle, or 20. Again, who am I to judge? Meditate on who you may be missing this year, or somebody who has crossed over, passed on, passed away, whatever. And it doesn't even have to be from the year before. That's another thing I like to do every Halloween, Samhain, whatever you want to call it. Both of my parents have moved on from this physical realm, and they now exist in the spirit realm, and I check in with them every year at Samhain. And of course, I wouldn't be gin and tonic if I wouldn't suggest a bath ritual. This is a great idea for somebody who is very solitary, maybe doesn't have like a big family, because holy crap, finding time to take a bath, not the easiest. So this one's better suited for somebody who maybe lives alone or is definitely a solitary witch. But because I make bath products, of course I'm going to suggest a bath ritual, a beautiful bath bomb, some bath salts, a cleanser that is aligned with your intention, set some mood music, light a candle, again, or 20, I'm not judging you. Meditate on what has changed over the last year and what hasn't, or what you want to achieve in the coming year. And then you could finish that off with some body oil that is aligned with your intents also. Again, I make all these products. They are in my shop. Link will be somewhere below. As an alternative to that, you could also do a shower ritual instead. You don't have a bathtub? No big deal. Pick up some shower steamers that are aligned with your intention. Visualize all the ick of the last year. And I don't know about you, but for me, there's a lot of ick that's transpired over the last year. Visualize it washing down the drain. Again, use a shower steamer that is aligned with your intention. Use a cleanser that is aligned with your intention. Use, maybe put on some body butter or again, some body oil after your shower. And our other bonus ritual that we'll discuss today is wards and protective symbols. Now, as we discussed last week, this is a great time of year to do some fall cleaning. So you're going to want to physically cleanse your space. And then use something like rosemary water or Florida water or something that has been infused with a protective herb. It doesn't have to be rosemary. It can be whatever you want. If you are also going to use a water-based application for doing protective wards and sigils in your space, I highly recommend making or using moon water. This is a perfect application for moon water. And then you're going to draw a protective symbol on whatever you're trying to protect. So a lot of people do it on doors and windows or mirrors. I do like to do it on all of those things. And then the symbol that I usually use is a pentacle, much like this, or at least a star. As you are drawing your protective symbol on whatever piece of furniture, door, window, etc., you can also say an affirmation that is aligned with that, and it'll be so much more powerful. Instead of using water, you can always smoke cleanse as an alternative to that. Light an incense stick. Light a bundle of some ethically gathered herb. And with that, let's get into sage cleansing. A lot of people use sage for everything, and that's fine. White sage can be considered a closed practice by certain people. It is not overly ethical to use it unless you're indigenous. If you are going to use it, at least you make sure you buy it from an indigenous source where it has been ethically harvested. Instead, if you are unmelanated like me, and of the colonizer variety, you want to use garden sage instead. And actually, garden sage even isn't necessarily my thing. I much prefer to use rosemary. When I use sage, garden sage, it leaves a space so neutral. There is just zero energy left in it, which is fine. Don't get me wrong. Frequently, that is the goal. Instead, I like to use rosemary. Just personal preference. Rosemary does the same job of cleansing any negative vibes, but it leaves all the good vibes that are in a space behind. So any good energy that exists in your space will continue to exist in your space. So rosemary is my actual preference for purification. Rosemary also is great for remembrance, as we discussed earlier. And that means that it's it's a way of remembering the good things about whatever led up to this moment in time. So instead of just clearing out the energy of a space and leaving it completely neutral, I like to leave some positive kind of vibes with it. Now that you know a lot more about Samhain, leave me a comment letting me know how you will be celebrating this year. That's it for today. Be sure to like and subscribe and turn on that bell notification when we release another video. But we'll be taking a scholarly look at the First Amendment and how it ties in with everything we've been discussing so far. I think it is more important than ever at this point in time to discuss that and to shed light on a subject that a lot of people seem to know but don't really have an in-depth knowledge of. So we're going to try and make it fun, as much fun as the U.S. Constitution can be. Until next week, peace out, witches.